So he built first one bungalow, just a one-room thing, with a bathroom, a shower outside. I guess it must have had a bathroom. But it was a one-room thing. And we rented it to Ida Linnick and her husband, Edward, I think. But he had a son who became my friend and playmate. And we would play pinochle together, and we would keep score of who won games. We had a record. He was more risk-taking, so he had a losing record, and I had a winning record.
What's pinochle?
Pinochle is a card game that they play in Europe, and I think the Russian Jews play it. But they played it, and I learned how to play it when I was about 6.
Who did you learn from?
And my sisters, most probably. We were, there was 5 of us, so we would play together. And we'd also play with our relatives.
So what sort of memories do you have of playing with your siblings?
Yeah, played with my siblings. My sisters were older, had 3 older sisters. And my younger brother, who we called Snooky. And we called him Snooky until he was 13 and grew to 6 foot and looked down on us and said, I don't want to be called Snooky anymore. So then we start calling Jules. I didn't know we minded being called Snooky.
How did you get that name?
What's that?
How did you get the name Snooky?
I think it was a pet name for younger children, Snooky. We called him that till he was about 13, which was a little past the time you call a young male by a pet name like that. So he stood up 6 foot tall and said, I don't want to be called Snooky anymore, as he looked down on us. We said, okay. But he and I were very close. I would teach him how to play the various games. I taught him how to play basketball. We played against 2 of my friends who were my height, about 5'6", and my brother was about 5 foot. He was small. And they sort of challenged us. They said, you 2 can play us, and they were my height. And he was a little skirt. But I had taught him how to play. We killed them. 50-4. We knew how to play, they didn't know how to play. My buddy Manny and Jack, I think. They thought he's so small that they could run over us. But no, I had taught him how to play, and he could run fast and run away from them, and I'd pass the ball to him, and he'd shoot it and score. He became pretty good. Good enough to try out for the college team.
Really?
He didn't make it, but he was good.
What about your sisters?
My 3 sisters, they were we lived in a poor neighborhood, and they told my father, we can't meet eligible men in this poor neighborhood. So my father, who always had buildings which we lived in, took a big plunge and rented an apartment on Eastern Parkway, which was a more affluent neighborhood, so that my sisters could meet more eligible guys. But that didn't matter with my sister Selma, who was the oldest, because she met her guy when she was 16, and they went together and eventually got married and stuff. So that move didn't mean a thing for her. But for my sister Helen and my sister Charlotte, they met some more eligible guys that way. But unfortunately, my sister Charlotte married a guy during the war, and all the guys were gone, but the guy she met was 4F. In other words, he was not fit for service. He had a problem. I think he had a eardrum something or other, nothing big. And she met him during the war, and they got married for 9 years, and she divorced him. She was beyond him. He was his name was Manny Alboa, Alboher. There was a section in Brooklyn that had all Spanish Jews.
Really?
And they spoke Spanish. And my first girlfriend was Zelda, who was a Spanish Jew.
I didn't know there were Spanish Jews.
Spanish Jews. And they came from Spain. Spanish Jews. And they didn't speak Jewish, they spoke Spanish, which was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister Charlotte met Manny Alboa, a Spanish Jew, and she was only about 18 or 19. And he was, I guess, charming. And there weren't many guys around, because it was wartime, and the men were away. And he was 4F. So she met him, and he charmed her, and they got married. But it didn't last. Yes, about 9 years. Then she married a podiatrist from the Catskills, the mountains. Well, married a doctor. But he practiced in the Catskills, where there were no people to serve as a podiatrist, especially as his brother also was a podiatrist. They were over podiatrists in this area.
Right.
So one of them had to move to New York. But there wasn't enough patients, so he didn't do well. And so my sister Charlotte, whose first husband didn't do well, who did well during the war, once the war was over and the other guys came home, he lost his job and he was laid off, and he was not a go-getter. He just stayed home and didn't work. Very sad. So she divorced him. And she met Bob from the Catskills, who was a podiatrist. Well, they got married. He's a good, nice guy, good guy. But there wasn't enough patients, so he didn't do too well either.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlotte wasn't doing too well in the marriage. And she was a beautiful blonde. She's a beauty, but a very good figure too. Selma met her guy when she was 16, Milton.
Mm-hmm.
And they went together and went together and went together. He went to the service and served 3 years. Came back and they went together and they got married. She did not have much experience. One guy. That was limited experience. I say, she did date another guy during the war, but just for a few days, as I remember.
What about your other sister?
So my older sister, Selma, she hooked up with Milton at 16.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to the service.
Right.
He spent 3 years and he served in New Guinea, on an island in New Guinea. And he was a anti-tank, worked on an anti-tank
Mm-hmm.
in the Pacific area. Helen was this tall, stately gal. She went to Hunter College. She was the one who went to college. My sister Selma went for 1 semester. Helen went all the way to Hunter, got her teaching certificate, and became a stenographer and typing teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Shorthand. They would be secretaries and stuff, taking shorthand. And that's what she taught. So she graduated college. Only one of my 3 sisters who graduated college. Though the boys, I and my brother, we both had trouble in college. My brother failed out and then went back and did okay. And I didn't do too well in undergraduate college. I think I had a 2.0 average. I just made it. But when I did my master's, I had 4 points. And my doctorate, I was a star. I was such an outstanding student in doctoral work that they asked me to teach in the program. I was getting my doctorate. I think I lost my train of thought.
I am about to go to the grocery store.
Good.
Get you some Ensure.